Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. K-pop supergroup BTS has launched its new world tour Arirang, kicking off with a concert in Goyang on April 9th. The tour is set to span 34 cities and 85 shows worldwide, with many performances taking place in stadiums and large domes featuring a 360-degree open stage. Dozens of concerts across Korea, Japan, North America, and Europe have already been sold out, with millions of tickets expected to be sold globally. The tour also follows the success of BTS's latest album, Arirang, which topped the Billboard 200 for 2 consecutive weeks. So today, we take a look at the scale of this tour and what it tells us about BTS's expanding global influence and the growing reach of K-pop. And for this, we connect to Sarabo Seji, Assistant Professor of Korean and East Asian Studies at Busan National University. A big welcome.
Good to see you again.
And also joining us is Dr. Donna Lee Kwan, professor of the ethnomusicology at the University of Kentucky. Good to see you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So let's start a discussion with Professor Seji. So on the 9th, like I said, BTS kicked off their world tour Arirang with a concert in Goyang. Beyond just simply marking the start of a global tour, what kind of symbolic meaning does this performance carry for fans?
Well, last month we had the performance at Gwanghwamun, and it was really made to highlight the new album and satisfy global Netflix viewers. But the shows this weekend, yesterday and the next 2 days, are the true start of the tour, where fans are going to be able to see a full show with the old favorites mixed in with the new music from the Arirang album. It's an opportunity to connect or reconnect with BTS and with ARMY. It's also symbolically the start of their chapter 2. They're adult men, they're industry veterans. In some ways, that frees them to try something new. In other ways, it's putting additional pressure on them to live up to the hype because they've been called the most successful, the best loved, the most known K-pop artists in the world. Honestly, the fact that BTS has ended their service and less than a year later, they've recorded a full-length album and now started a world tour is amazing.
Right, definitely. It really shows how much meaning this tour really carries for fans around the world. Now, looking at the stage itself, the Goyang concert reportedly featured a 360-degree open stage and large-scale stadium production as well. Professor Kwon, do you think this kind of style of performance is setting a new standard for K-pop concerts?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I have seen a similar format like this, the 360 degree, when I went to KCON LA last year in Los Angeles. So I have seen K-pop in this 360 degree format, but I think the way that BTS is doing, based on some of the early footage of the Goyang concert, I think there's something interesting going on. They have like a circular stage in the center, and that actually reminded me a lot of the Madang concept in Korea. And I actually have done a whole book on this subject, so I'm very passionate about it. But basically, you have the audience fully surrounding the circular stage. And so I think that could be potentially very powerful. It could also potentially set them up to possibly perform in the Super Bowl. I know there's a lot of chatter about this. And the only worry I have as a fan or as somebody who might attend these concerts is that, you kind of, in this format, you might not always be able to see the front of BTS depending on where you're sitting. So for fans, it might be a little bit strange. But I think it'll be great. And, people look at the video monitors quite a bit and rely on those. So I'm really excited to see how it ends up.
Well, really, it's a good thing that, they're trying new kind of performances and ways to reach out to the audiences as well. But Professor Seji, I hear that you are also planning to attend the BTS concert in person this time around. From a researcher's perspective, what aspects of this performance are you particularly paying attention to?
Well, as a scholar who looks at how Korea is presented to the world, most of what I'm going to be paying attention to is what they say or infer about Korea and Korean culture. To that end, I'm really looking forward to the comments, the ments. I want to see if there's modernized hanbok in any of the stage costumes. And I'm also really wondering how it's going to feel to be in a stadium of people singing Arirang during Body to Body. I'm also curious if the concert is going to feel focused on the Korean audience or if the global streaming viewership represented by the international fans in the live audience is going to be more of a focus on. And because I also research dance and I've always focused heavily on the dance in BTS performances and music videos, I'm curious about the reports from Thursday that there was little dancing. This may be different on Saturday when it isn't raining, or it could be, as per circulating comments from HYBE's Bang Si-hyuk, it could be part of a changed focus in performance for the BTS members.
Right, so definitely a lot of factors to look forward to. We hope you come back to us and tell us about your experience in one of those concerts. Now, when we turn back to the music itself, the comeback album stands out for placing traditional elements, including the Korean folk song, Arirang, of course, at the center. Professor Kwon, would you say this goes beyond just simple borrowing and has actually evolved into a new musical language? And also, as an ethnomusicologist, how do you evaluate it?
Yes, I mean, I do think it has gone beyond simple borrowing, and there's a couple things about it that really stood out to me. One is in Body to Body, when the Arirang comes in, it comes in towards the end of the song, and initially it kind of comes in a place where the Korean minyo singers, you kind of hear them in the background, and then the BTS members are kind of doing these phrases, and it sort of feels like a call and response between the two. And it also reminded me a lot of the practice of chuimse, which, you know, the 얼씨구 절씨구 kind of thing that you hear a lot in traditional music. And it sort of reverses the role of BTS vis-a-vis the audience, or vis-a-vis the minyo singers, because all of a sudden the BTS members are now in the supporting role and like basically making this minyo shine in a really fun way. And I'm really anticipating, like Dr. Seiji, what this is going to be like being in the audience and having the audience singing Arirang, and then BTS is shouting back, you know, somebody like you, yeah, and like these shouts. And so really looking forward to that. So I think that was really nice. And the other thing I was really struck by was the inclusion of number 29, the sound of the bell, the sacred bell of King Seongdok. And I mean, a lot of people say, well, that's not original. Anybody could have done that. But, you know, I think at a conceptual level, it's very interesting. And, you know, it's sort of like, you know how artists, sometimes they'll say, you go to a modern museum, a modern art museum, and they say, oh, anybody could have, you know, put a line on a canvas and called that art. And I think this is kind of similar. You know, anybody could have included something like this, but nobody else thought to do it. So it's sort of the conceptual aspect of it that's so interesting. And for me, I think the way I read it is that the sounds of Korea are just beautiful on their own. And I think this is kind of what BTS is saying. I think a lot of people are saying, well, this is kind of a break between like the first half of the album, which is very rap heavy, and the second half, which is more melodic. But for me, it's just so refreshing. I love listening to just that track alone. And I think a lot of other people do too as well. And I think it just really just says, like, you know, Korean music is already beautiful. The sounds of Korea are already beautiful on their own. So that in itself, I think, is a very, very powerful statement. As far as making a new musical language, I don't know if I would go that far with this particular album. I think there are other groups that are combining tradition and contemporary music in interesting ways that, you know, that's more of their thing, like groups like Inalchi and ADG7 that maybe might going a little further along those lines. But in itself, but as it is, I really, really appreciated these two moments in this album. So.
Right, so it's not just a tradition being referenced, but possibly reinterpreted in a new musical form. Now, of course, the response of fans has been enormous. BTS's fifth full-length album, Arirang, has topped the Billboard 200 for 2 consecutive weeks, while global audio streaming platform Spotify recorded a 690% surge in new listeners. Professor Seji, what factors do you think have helped BTS's popularity expand beyond its current fandom?
Well, I think it's important to understand that a lot of this is coming from fans who have a really strong desire to support the success of BTS through actively buying and streaming the album and tracks. And fans are actually educating each other about details like how to stream so that your streams will help BTS rank well on Billboard. Fans feel very responsible for BTS's success. Before the album was released, I even saw social media posts from student fans wondering if they should skip school so they could stream as soon as the album dropped. Now, don't worry, other fans reminded them how much BTS members value education and encouraged them to just stream when they got home. But because Billboard's no longer counting YouTube plays, it's basically forcing fans to be more focused on streaming platforms like Spotify if they want to support BTS. And they are also aware that premium account streams count higher than free account streams. And I think that all of that explains the surge in listeners. I also honestly think the mixed reaction to the new music may have motivated fans who enjoy it to put out even more efforts. And during the pandemic, BTS attracted many new fans at the same time as they began releasing in English. And those new fans seemed to generally approve of Arirang and the international production and the English lyrics. And so if this album charts well, ultimately it's a success, no matter what some critics or long-term fans might feel.
Now, speaking of success of the album, of course, there are a lot of factors that brought to this. But Professor Kwon, why do you think, a strategy that highlights the most Korean elements has resonated so much strongly in this global market?
Well, I think that in the global market, especially when there are other types of music involved, I think there's often this logic of sameness and difference. So people want something familiar, so something similar, but at the same time, they want it to be different because they don't want it to just be a copy of what they've already heard domestically. So I think that's one reason why global products often need a mixture of the two. And I think what people love about K-pop, I think, are some of those Korean elements. So the Korean language, Korean sounds, traditional elements that they might hear in some of the music. Some people call it the bong factor. I've heard producers talk about that. That sort of ineffable kind of Korean sound, I guess, which is sometimes hard to describe or put your finger on, but when you hear it, you know it. And so I think people are often looking for those things. In the context of BTS, I think there has been some feeling in the fandom that they went too far in the English language direction and, trying to sort of break into the, US market or Anglophone market, and that they might have maybe lost a little bit of their Koreanness or something like that. And so I think in the context of that, with songs like Butter and Dynamite and Permission to Dance, I think the fans really wanted a return, I think, back to more Korean language and elements. So I think they were hungry for that.
Definitely. When we ride this wave of enthusiasm, the tour, it has now expanded to 85 shows, including additional concerts in South America. And fans in Peru have even launched a campaign to plant 1 million trees to help preserve Machu Picchu. Professor Seji, how should we interpret this growing social influence of the fandom of BTS?
Well, throughout the history of Korean pop music, fans have consistently participated in campaigns like this. BTS fans have also famously engaged in campaigns to, for example, match BTS's donations to causes like Black Lives Matter. But there are dozens of other worthy causes around the world, from arts education to literacy programs to environmental campaigns, that BTS fandom has gotten behind. And the members of BTS themselves are also big donors who have spread very thoughtful words about supporting community and social causes. And so I think that further encourages fans to think of social responsibility as part of fandom and part of enacting membership in ARMY. Ironically, however, keeping fans socially engaged can also come back to haunt BTS because sometimes they have become involved with companies that their fans disapprove of.
Well, even so, it's quite remarkable to see fans turning music into some real-world action, of course. And that influence, it appears to be reaching the political level as well. The president of Mexico has reportedly sent a letter to President Lee Jae-myung requesting an additional BTS concert. As K-pop expands into regions like Latin America and the Middle East, Professor Kwon, how would you assess the growing influence of this soft power?
I mean, I definitely think that there is more, I think BTS, this tour is going to have a huge economic impact, both on, BTS themselves, HYBE, as well as the Korean government. I'm sure the numbers, the gross numbers are going to increase quite a bit. And I think with that, I guess, soft power will potentially increase. I think like Dr. Seiji and many others, we don't necessarily buy into this framework of soft power, or we're very ambivalent about it. I think it does make sense, like on a surface level. And when I teach my students, I sometimes talk about soft power. But in my research, I don't necessarily talk about K-pop and how in these terms. I think it kind of replicates the language of, cultural imperialism, cultural domination, and that kind of thing. And it could potentially even cause a backlash against it. So, I prefer to talk about what's happening as, modes, opportunities for cultural exchange and dialogue, increased dialogue, sharing. I guess I tend to look at this more in an idealistic way, I suppose. But I definitely think that there is a growing influence and growing impact in South America in particular, Middle East, other areas that maybe have not been given as much research or spotlight. So I think definitely, hopefully more work will be done along these lines.
Let's hope for that. Now, finally, looking ahead at the industry impact, North American and European concerts have already recorded large-scale sellouts. Professor Seiji, what kind of impact could this trend have on the K-pop industry and the global concert market as well?
Well, I think it's important to note that HYBE as an organization is really heavily invested in concerts as one of their main areas of earning, even to a degree that has worried some of their investors as the income streams appear unbalanced. HYBE has really high overhead, and despite bringing in more money than any other K-pop agency, its profit margin is smaller than other major agencies. But in 2025, they earned $537 million from concerts, and they managed to increase their earnings from concerts by 69% compared to what they earned in 2024. And part of that's due to these live streams that we have an option to live stream concerts so often. But, of course, it's also having more concerts in more places around the world. And in 2025, top K-pop tours, most of them were from HYBE artists, including both Jin and J-Hope from BTS on solo tours. However, none of those big tours in 2025 had as many stops as are planned for the Arirang tour. In the past, a large K-pop tour had 25 to 35 shows usually, not over 80. Over 80 shows really is unprecedented in the K-pop industry, and it will be enormously exhausting for the members of BTS. But I think it most of all demonstrates how much the BTS members themselves missed ARMY. They are doing everything they can to get out there and meet their fans.
Wow, definitely. It's a very heartwarming and a very historic move indeed. And it will be interesting to see how this tour really shapes the future of K-pop and the industry as well. But as for now, we'll have to conclude our discussion here tonight. Thank you so much for your insights, Professor Seji.
Thank you.
And of course, Professor Kwon, we really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.